Imagine how you would feel if someone took your clients and your revenue. I don't know that many staffing agencies that are open-minded about accepting that reality.
And they were like, hey, I'm going to go all in. Just leave my job, buddy. You can find your first client while you're working.
Being independent doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be working 12 months out of the year.
Recruiters, they just mass email everyone, then no one answers. If you're the one answering. Before we dive deeper into this episode, I want to welcome you to the very first episode of the Ask an Expert podcast, the podcast where we demystify the Workday ecosystem from a consultant, client, and company's point of view. Today, we have Mohamed Krid as a guest, an independent consultant with many years of experience, where we'll chat about 7 things to never do as an independent consultant. So if you're interested in independent consulting, if you're already an independent consultant, or if you're a company and you're just thinking about hiring an independent consultant, I think you'll enjoy this episode. Hey Mohamed, how have you been?
Hey man, it's going. How about you, man?
All is well. I appreciate you coming physically to the studio. This new podcast that I'm starting, I know that I will not have all of my guests in person, but I feel like in person is way better. So appreciate your move here. So Mohamed, we talked a little bit before the recording. We talked a little bit yesterday. Today we have a really good episode, especially for independent consultants. We're going to talk about don'ts when you're an independent consultant. We have 7 great tips to share here. And you guys are listening to 2 independent consultants. Together we have, I think, a decade of experience, even more.
Yeah, a little more than that.
Yeah. So 4 years as an independent, 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Right? So we have lots of tips. We have lots of stories to share. So if you're an independent, or if you're thinking about becoming independent, this episode is for you. And we're going to jump right into it. The first one is don't burn bridges with staffing agencies. And I found this subject very interesting. So Mohamed, I'll let you chat about it.
So a lot of people, when they get started going independent, are really aiming for the money, right? Aiming for a quick start, making the most out of it. They're very concerned. They're stressed. We don't know how long it's going to last and whatnot, right? So they go in and they start doing business with the client. And they figure out that most of the staffing agencies are there making money, and that's their business model.
Yeah.
They're here to staff you because they have the contacts, they have the network, and you don't. So when they staff you on a project, be very, very careful is my advice, because if you start trying to go behind their backs and taking their clients, imagine how you would feel if someone took your clients and your revenue. So basically you're taking away their business. And if you do that, I don't know that many staffing agencies that are very open-minded about accepting that reality. So you could shoot yourself in the foot. And for someone that's brand new in the ecosystem, that is a bad move to make.
Especially, I think, in the Workday ecosystem, which is like very, very small. Even if right now in 2024, there are so many partners, it's still fairly small. And so if you do something like that, we'll hear about it at some point, especially because recruiters, they also move from companies to companies. 100%. So if they worked with you and you did that, then, this reputation will follow you during your career. And also, I think my advice is not to be that hungry. Like, you're gonna make money if you go independent, and if you want to stay independent,
as long as you're good.
Yeah, as long as you're good and you have a reputation, for sure. But it's not a difference of like, $10, $20, $30, $40 that will make a huge difference in your model, as long as you know what you're doing.
If I had to go back in time and look at what advice I would have given myself when I got started, is aim for the long run instead of looking for the 3 to 6 month mark, right? Because a lot of times when you transition from having a job, right, into going independent, you have that safety factor that's concerning you, right? But like I said, as long as you are professional, you know your stuff. Like, don't go independent if you have less than a year of experience, right? It's going to be very hard for you to make your position in the market. It's going to be very difficult for the agencies to market you as a resource, and it's going to be very hard for you to get actually very interesting rates as well.
That's the best segue for number 2, right? Number 2, don't leave your job before you even get your first client or contract.
Yeah.
I was speaking with an independent consultant a few weeks ago, and they were actually two, even one yesterday. They were considering going independent, and they were like, "Hey, I'm gonna go all in, just leave my job and just focus on it." Buddy, like I swear, you can find your first client while you're working at your 9 to 5 job, and then you can just leave afterwards and just be safe this way.
Exactly. And one very good advice I would have to give when leaving your position is give time to the current company, because you want to leave in a good note. If that company is treating you well as well, right? So it's a back and forth relationship. If you're looking to transition towards independence, that's fine. Start networking first with multiple agencies to see what you are worth in the market before making a jump. A lot of people are just frustrated with their current positions and jobs, and they make an emotional decision to quit.
Yeah.
And then only are they starting to rush towards agencies and saying, I need this, I need that. That's not how it goes. Agencies never worked with you. They don't know you. You don't know the market price. So it's offer and demand, right? If you're rushed to get into a position because you took a wrong move, you could sign a contract for less money than you would have in other situations.
Yeah.
So evaluate the market and network with the people that you can, as many agencies as you can, before quitting your job and switching to independent.
Also, I think if you have a good relationship with your current company, I think being transparent with them will also help you. In my experience, back at DXC, I literally told them like, hey, I'm going to leave in the next 2-3 months and I'm going to go independent. And so I gave them enough time for me to offboard a few of the projects that I was in, train some other people also, and they really appreciated that. And in that situation, they didn't give me a contract to keep going, but in other situations, I've seen them do that. Even talking to other independents, a lot of their permanent companies, they ask them like, hey, do you want to stay for an extra 4 or 5 months as a contractor? And then, we can go our separate ways.
That is a very good point that you just brought up, because sometimes if you're very valuable to that company, they will offer you to stay on as independent, right? And a lot of independents or transitioning users don't want to go that route because they have emotional decisions based on their employment. My advice is business and personal is personal. When you're an employee working for that company, that's one thing. When you transition to independent, that's a whole different thing. So try to take away the emotional aspect out of it and think about it logically. If you were working multiple hours, 60 plus hours a week as an employee, think about it as an independent. You could get a preferential rate because you're going direct between yourself and your organization. You can make a lot more than 40 hours a week, and there's no cap on your revenue at that point. So if you're making a very decent rate for your expertise, once again, it's all about knowing what are the rates out there.
Yeah.
You need to do your networking and your research before trying to jump any bridges.
Chatting with other independent consultants,
Yep.
Chatting with recruiters, staffing agencies.
100%.
That's how you get the information. There's also Reddit. I'm not sure if you use Reddit a little bit.
I do, but it depends, right?
Yeah.
Because Reddit is going to be, some people are posting their rates based on the relationships that they have with agencies, right? So what is true for them might not be true for you, especially based on certifications, because in the Workday ecosystem, right, it's all dependent on your areas of expertise. Some areas of expertise pay more, simply because there are less resources of it in the ecosystem.
Like inventory.
Actually, I do have a lot of opportunities in supply chain management.
Yeah.
And you have different markets as well. So what are you specializing in? Are you specializing in services? Are you specializing in healthcare? Are you specializing in higher ed? Are you specializing in, transportation?
Manufacturing.
Whatever, right? Manufacturing. All of these industries are going to have different rates as well. So depending on where you're specializing, you're going to be able to have different rates. My advice is sign a contract and then say to your employer that you're leaving.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Don't be excited.
Yeah.
Because the recruiter tells you like the interview went A1 and you go running to your employer and saying, I'm quitting, I'm going independent. If there's something that I could give advice to newer people going into the independent world, is that a contract signature is very, very important. But even then, it doesn't mean
it's not enough
that you're actually starting.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think it's bounding and I have a contract, I'm supposed to start. Like, I need to start.
Yeah.
Full transparency, happened to me multiple times in the past and to multiple resources that I've staffed. You have a contract never pans out. You literally did the interview, everyone was happy, you had a signed agreement, and still nothing happened. Why? Multitudes of justifications could take place, but having a signed contract is the minimum I would recommend before you actually think of telling your organization you're leaving.
Well, I'd love to just dive a little bit deeper into this subject since it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What reasons do you usually hear when you actually sign a contract but then it never starts and it gets canceled?
Organizations that are looking for resources to do staff augmentation are not just talking to one recruiting agency usually.
Yeah.
Right? So they might have had interviews with you on Monday and they're having interviews with resources from another agency on Tuesday and so on and so far, right? So on Monday, your guy from your agency managed to get you a signature. Everyone was happy. But then the next day, the client meets someone that's even better, right? And they're even more impressed. So you could lose that opportunity to someone else.
So you've seen that even when they send the contract, you already signed, but then they met someone else they think are a better fit and they're like, hey, sorry, but
you disappear. You have some situations where it's all about budgets. We went through COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of companies had ups and downs. So basically, yes, they need the help. They absolutely need it. But once again, business is business. Numbers are numbers. Like, it's not about you. That is something very important to understand. It's never about you.
Yeah, it's
about
business.
the numbers.
Yeah.
If they have budget, they're going to keep extending you.
Yeah.
If they don't have budget, you could be a shooting star and they're still going to have to cut you.
It happened to me once last year, but the reason was a little bit more intricate. So actually, a director at a client was looking for time tracking help and they really pushed for it because, I don't know, time tracking was very messed up at that organization. And so they interviewed me and they were like, okay, cool, we'll take MAHDI, right? And after my start date was 3 weeks after I signed my contract. And I was fairly new, right? So I was like, okay, cool. I'm super excited. I was preparing myself. I even said no to other contracts because I already signed a contract, right? And so I think a week before my start date, they moved my start date again. Like they moved it 1 week. And I'm like, hey, what's happening? And then apparently that director was leaving. And so when they left officially, the new director came in and they're like, hey, time tracking is not my priority. Like, let's focus on this other module. And they're like, okay, well, I don't need MAHDI anymore then. And they just canceled the contract.
Yep.
So definitely, I would recommend you sign the contract, yes. Then it's about the vibe check as well. I would even say maybe sign the contract, even start maybe 1 week, and then you leave the company. And it all depends on, your relationship with your current company as well. This may change, but in general, I think that's best practice.
You're right, because the first week usually is just onboarding. Like you're getting the computer, you're getting accesses, it's IT questions. Oh, I'm not having access to this environment.
Yeah.
Outlook is not working, XYZ, right? So,
but it's pretty rare that you actually start the onboarding and then they cancel the contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very good advice about like getting started. And depending on the relationship that you have with your current employer, if you know they might give you an offer as well, then you could tell them, I could take on an engagement with you guys on a part-time basis. So those are options as well. A lot of people are going to say, okay, but like I got a contract. I want to go to my employer, say I'm going to take this contract or you guys beat it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't even have the signed contract.
Yeah.
What happens, and I've seen this happen, that's why I'm saying this, is they're going to say, we're not going to give you a match for what you're looking. Good luck. So we're expecting your 2 weeks notice. And basically you've said bye-bye to that job and you never got the contract.
Yeah. So
you're
lose-lose
left,
situation.
You're left with nothing. So
I think what you just said is an amazing segment to our third point. So let's say that you got your first client, you signed, you actually started your first week, you onboarded, and then you ask your employer, hey, like I can stay on a part-time basis, and they say yes. Then all of a sudden you have 2 contracts at the same time. And so our number 3 or third advice, I would say, is, don't take too many contracts at the same time, especially as a new independent or even ever. And I think if I can start, I think it's all about reputation. I've heard so many clients say like, hey, like I don't really like working with contractors because, they're not available. We message them, they don't reply because they're just focused on something else. So what's your experience with it?
So very good advice there. When you're getting started, your image and your name is basically your brand. If your brand starts off as you being unavailable, not just the clients are going to have an issue with you. Something even more important to me is because clients come and go, right? You go in, you do the best you can, you give them as much value as possible, and at some point in time, you're going to be let go after 6 months, a year, you name it, right?
Well, not let go, but your contract finishes.
Finishes, right? Yeah, it's not necessarily, unless you're doing something bad.
Yeah, of course.
And like you're really not giving them a time of the day.
Yeah.
Like a lot of clients are going to be very understanding. Some of them expect more of your presence, some of them less. And that's up to you and the opportunities that come along your way. But more important than that is the relationships that you have with the recruiters. Because the agencies that are staffing you are giving you your first shot. You're brand new. No one knows you, man. Like literally no one knows you. That needs to sink into your brain. Like no one knows you. You could be a superstar over at your company, but in the independent world, no one knows you. So the first company that gives you a shot, the first agency that gives you a shot, expects you to do a very good job, and they're vetting you in their own system.
Yeah.
Once you pass that first engagement and they get feedback from the client saying, wow, Krid was A1. He was amazing. He was super responsive. He knew a lot. He was very knowledgeable. He gave best practices. We did change management with him. We went over multiple training materials, XYZ, right? This is music to their ears.
Yeah.
Because when they hear this, they're like, okay, Krid is a good guy for us. He got multiple extensions and we want to continue working with this guy. So if I get new opportunities, who am I going to call? Krid.
Krid first.
So this is very important. When you're getting started, this is going back to like the money aspect of it, right? You're stressed. You don't know how much you're going to make.
Yeah.
XYZ, right? Think about it long term. It's hard to do, but like try to think about it long term and try to take one step at a time.
Focus on your reputation first.
Exactly.
Focus on your work. Build your name out there.
100%.
And then the money will come anyway.
100%. Once you've got that flow going of a good relationship with one agency, they start calling you every couple of weeks. Hey, we got this. Are you interested? And even for agencies themselves, they don't want to staff you on more than one engagement, right? Because they have a reputation to uphold with their clients, and it's up to you to understand, okay, my bandwidth is I'm willing to work 40 hours a week, right? So you're taking however many engagements, this is with experience, you think you're going to be able to handle. Is it 2 part-times? Is it 1 full-time? Whatever. Or I'm willing to work a lot more hours and opportunities are coming my way with Eastern time zone or even Europe time zones. So you could get started early in the morning and Europe projects are going to finish early for you. You could pick up Pacific
other
time
projects,
zones, right?
Yeah.
And continue working, right?
That's for the hustlers.
Exactly. So if you're really looking for numbers while continuing to give quality, right, and having a good reputation with agencies, that's one way of going about it. Right?
Yeah.
So
I was talking to an independent consultant, I think last week. And if you're asking, I've been saying this all episode, but I talked to a lot of independents. One guy was like, hey, like I didn't decide to become independent to like work more hours. His work-life balance and his quality of life was more important. And so every time you ask him for a full-time gig, they're like, no, I'm not interested. I'm only looking for like 2 or 3 part-time gigs where, it's 30, 35 hours a week. Not a lot of meetings, a lot of configurations here and there. They're just free.
100%. And it's gonna be very hard for you to understand what we're talking about right now.
If you're not independent.
If you're not independent.
Yeah, but you'll get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll understand it. And that's why we're giving you this advice in advance so that you don't make the mistakes that other people around us, because we've seen those people. And we've seen what happens when they burn bridges with recruiters. They're having a hard time finding contracts.
You've seen it, right?
Yeah,
Personally in your circle,
I've seen multiple experts burning bridges. And they thought they were making a big deal because it was a short-term higher revenue. But then when that contract is over, and
then it's over.
You go back to that recruiting agency, they're like, thank you, next.
Yeah.
I'm not interested, right? So then it's about like rebuilding that relationship.
I don't think it's possible with that same staffing agency.
Yeah, in some cases you can, right? Like in some cases you can, but in other cases, if you burn the bridge twice, 3 times,
whoa,
okay, like it's as if I said to someone, "Okay, nice to meet you." You slap me in the face. Next
3
thing
times.
I ask you is, please hit the other cheek, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So think about it as a business. If you're taking money away from them, they're not going to be happy. If you do it twice, I'm going to kick you out the door. Like, that's as simple as that. So,
and I think, just like you said, people who do that, they think short term, and they think short term because they're worried about their finances, about the uncertainty of the future. Like being independent, we never know what's going to happen. Sometimes the market is good, sometimes the market is bad. This is an amazing segment to our 4th don'ts. Don't leave your bank account empty. So with no emergency fund. I think as an independent consultant, it gives you the safety, that safety net that a permanent job would have given you. If you have 6 months or 8 months worth of expenses in your bank account that you do not touch, it's going to help you think long term, and it's going to help you make decisions that will help you in the long term, like not burning bridges with staffing agencies, not taking too many contracts and just like destroying your reputation and other things.
I'll make you laugh. You remember when I was getting close to June, not last year, the year before, and contracts were going by, and I had just transitioned from a job to like contracting, right?
Yeah.
You start stressing, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I took the first contract that I had. It was 6 months. And now, like, I don't have a job anymore. What's happening after those 6 months? And you start stressing because you're coming into summer. Everyone's going on vacation. Contracts are starting to slow down.
Your contract was ending in June.
Exactly. Yeah. End of June. So you're like, okay, what now? And you start stressing. And something that I have to say is that's normal. I was lucky enough to have found other contracts and like kept on working, right? And having a continuity to my year. But that's also part of the game.
Yeah.
Being independent doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be working 12 months out of the year.
Exactly. And I think that's why we become independent. We do not need to work 12 months to make the salary of a permanent job. I think 8 months is just enough. If you don't work 2 or 3 months, you're still going to make the same amount of money approximately. But it's hard. It's hard to think about it because
mentally,
because you've been working a 9 to 5 all your life, and you've been working every month of the year. So if you don't work for like July and August and it's not paid vacation, you're like, what the hell? Like I'm a failure and I'm gonna
100%. So when it comes to like planning for contract extensions and so on and so far, it's very important to know also like when to reach out to your agencies or to the clients and make sure that you have a 1 month notice saying, we're extending you. No, thank you very much for your services. You're going to be looking for something else.
But then that's theory, right? I think we chatted about this with a friend. I think best practice is to ask for an extension a month in advance, or just ask them about like, what are we? Are you going to extend? Are you committing to a long-term relation? But then let's say that the hiring manager is like, oh yeah, I'll follow up. I'll let you know. The staffing agency is, also on the sidelines. They're like, we don't know what's going to happen, et cetera. And then let's say that your contract is supposed to end next week. What do you do?
Business is business. This is where it all comes back down to business is business. If you don't have a net 30 response saying like, we're extending you, why would I not look for other opportunities? It's my right because I signed the contract up until that date. anything after that date is free for all. So it's up to you to also be ready to plan ahead. Don't stay sitting down hoping they're going to extend you, because they might not. What happens when they don't extend you? Then you're
just left out.
You're just left out without anything to do, maybe for a week, 2 weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take you to find something else. But my advice is net 30. If you don't have anything within that period, no response, no nothing, I would start looking, right? Just start looking, start sending resumes over if you have to, and discussing with your network, are there opportunities out there, XYZ. And once you have something planned for interviews, I would call the agency or the client that I'm working with and say, hey guys, I'm going for interviews this week. I need a go or no go response
For the extension.
And that usually speeds up reaction speed.
Yeah, especially if they need you
Exactly.
still. Yeah.
Exactly. So it speeds up things quite a bit, and you're still being 100% transparent. You're being professional. And one advice, because we're going back from like talking about contract extensions to bank accounts balances, right? When you're making money as a contractor, don't burn all of it. Be smart about like your finances. Like Mahdi was saying, you could make significantly more money than you were making as a employee, depending on the company that you're working for.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing a lot of my colleagues that are now going for upper positions that are getting very decent salaries. Their packages are very interesting.
You remember the job posting on LinkedIn? I think it was
450K.
Yeah, 450K for a permanent job in New York.
Exactly.
Relocation included.
So,
bro, I stopped independent consulting.
it's like independence is a lifestyle at the same time as having money, right? So it's a choice of going that route because you want to have more flexibility. You want to have more time for yourself. You don't want to go to the office per se. You don't want to have like that organization structure overseeing every single one of your actions. Like you want to be independent. That's the goal. But behind that becomes more financial awareness as well.
And responsibility.
Exactly. So you need to plan for how much you're going to be spending for the upcoming months. How much am I going to be paying myself? Make sure you have your tax money aside. Like all of those numbers are now your responsibility, and you have to find yourself a good accountant and plan for what needs to go where. So a lot of people just spend the money and year end comes around and they're like, well,
how can I pay my taxes?
Yeah, exactly. Because they thought, oh, I'm independent, I could just take money away. That's not how it goes.
Well, if you subscribe to this podcast, we'll film another episode where we're going to talk about these taxes and this back office that comes with being independent. It's not that simple. It's not just, go independent, find contracts. There's a lot of things.
I'll pay myself 200K. I'll pay myself 300K. No, that's not how it goes.
Exactly. I think you said something very important where related to the extension, 1 month before the end of your contract, you should start networking and trying to send out resumes in case they don't extend you, right? And it comes down to our fifth don't turn off your LinkedIn profile, I think, right, while you're working as an independent, because you still want to have that flow of recruiters and people reaching out to you, even if you're not available. Because from my experience, you need to keep them close to your circle and you let them know, hey, I'm not available now, but I should be in 3 months. And they will appreciate you for it because, recruiters, they just mass email everyone and then no one answers, or just a very small minority. If you're the one answering, even if you say no for now, they'll remember you. They'll put you in another category. And then when you reach out back a few months later, they're more likely to respond to you.
100%. And for someone starting, the worst thing you could do is close off your LinkedIn thinking that you're good to go because you're doing business with one agency and they've staffed you on one project.
Well, wait, you say for someone starting, but I think for everyone.
Yes, but even further, if that one person is just starting independent, that agency found them a contract, they staffed them, and they're like, okay, I don't want to have anyone else reach out to me because I'm very comfortable where I am. I have a 6 months contract. I'll close it for 3 months and then reopen it when I'm ready, right? Like, that is the worst possible thing you could do.
Yo, it's just segue. Remember our friend that we will not mention here, who says like, "Hey, I turned off my LinkedIn because I'm just I don't want recruiters to reach out to me, and I'm just like tired about people reaching out." I'm like, bro, like you're in a very good situation where people are reaching out to you for opportunities. You should just welcome them.
100%.
Tell them that you're not interested now because you never know what's going to happen in the future, and then you're going to need them. I was talking to a recruiter at Rising, and they're like, we have people where they don't understand that it's a two-way relationship. Like, hey, I'll call you when I have something, and if you're not interested, that's okay, because another day you'll call me for opportunities, and I'll give it to you if I have something. So if it's just like one way, it's not going to work long term. They're just going to leave you.
And that's where I was coming from, like when you're starting, because we're no longer starting. We have our networks. We're now helping other contractors getting staffed and helping other professionals getting staffed. But now we have personal relationships with those recruiters. Like, I'm more than happy to say that a lot of the recruiters that I talk to on a weekly basis are my friends. Literally, like, we speak about family, we speak about vacation, we speak about everything. It's not just business. And that is something a lot of people don't realize, is that they're human beings as well.
Exactly.
And they have a life as well. They're not just headhunters. They have objectives. Corporate is corporate. Their job is to recruit people and to staff them. If they have a good relationship with you because you're a good person to talk to and you're a good professional, why would they turn their back on you and look for someone else? They're always going to come back to you and continue offering opportunities, especially if you understand that there's a pie, everyone eats their part, and don't try to eat more than yours. When you understand that and they know that, everyone knows their position, and everyone is very comfortable with one another. It's as if the barriers drop and you start having conversations about opportunities left and right, versus someone that you never spoke to reaches out to you. Like, people I don't know reach out to me. Hey, Krid, I'm looking for a job. Could you staff me? Hello? Who are you?
Yeah.
What is your experience? And so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And imagine if that one person is in your network, they appear once every year when they don't have work. What is going to be your reaction faced to that? Versus, imagine me calling you every month. Hey, MAHDI, how's it going, man? How are the kids? Just checking up. No, I don't have any bandwidth right now. I can't work, so I'm not going to be able to take any engagement and work with you guys, but I'm really looking forward to the next one. I should be available maybe around February, so we could reconnect and see what we could do there. Are you going to Workday Rising? Are you going on vacation? What's happening? XYZ, right? And just doing checkups on a monthly basis. A lot of people are antisocial. This is no longer being antisocial. This is you building your brand. This is you building your relationships. This is you building your company. Relationships are everything.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you want to increase the amount of conversations that you want to be having, especially on LinkedIn, I'm not sure if you have that toggle on your profile. You know that open to work banner? That's lame. I don't like it. However, you can be open to work in the background, like in the back end, where only recruiters can see it. Like on your profile, and maybe I'll show it on screen in post-prod, but you go and then you press like open to work, and then you select recruiters only, so that no other people can see it. And so in the back end, using LinkedIn Recruiter, well, those recruiters will be able to spot you and start conversations with you.
And a lot of people, once they're comfortable, I have my go-to contacts.
Recruiters,
right? Okay, that's fine. It's amazing that you have a good relationship and you built the network that you wanted to. Never close your LinkedIn. You never know which new agency is out there and has something that fits your needs, or maybe a member of your team that has the qualifications to be put on those engagements. In the last year or so, I've staffed people with agencies I didn't know last year.
Exactly.
And I've built those relationships, and I have a very comfortable relationship with each of them, and I appreciate the business that we're doing together. And that's how it goes. You build from what you already have. You keep those relationships active and alive, and you add on top of it.
Yeah, and that's linked to our sixth don't stop networking at any moment, even when you get started with a new contract or a new opportunity. Like just keep those conversations going. We're talking about LinkedIn because that's the easiest one, but you mentioned going to Workday Rising, hey, have you ever been to those Workday user groups events? There's one in Quebec. There's one in like every state and every like city. There's one in Toronto.
I
haven't either.
No.
We should bring someone to talk about it.
That would be nice, exactly, because we have to say we're basically in a different location in Canada than the main market, right? In the US, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to travel to those locations every time that there's a networking event, obviously that's going to increase our chances, right? Like even more. But I'm very comfortable, and that's the thing. Because you're in a different location than the US, like you're in Canada, Montreal, they don't know you as much as they know the people in the US, right?
Yeah.
So there's this guy up north.
Yeah.
He has 6 months of winter. We don't know him, but I've heard good things about him. And literally 2 days ago, one recruiter that I spoke to 2 years ago, we had a very good conversation. Everything went well, and the opportunities just didn't align. And I told him, listen, if you have anything else in the future, feel free to reach out. He reached out because one recruiter that I used to work with, and I'm still working with him, at a different agency, joined his group.
Yeah.
And he told him, listen, I know this amazing guy. His name is Krid. You should reach out to him. He reached out to me.
He remembered you,
and he's like, hey man, remember we spoke a couple of years ago? Are you interested in XYZ? Like, we have positions for maybe your team and so on and so far. Are you interested? Sorry, man, we're already staffed. We don't have bandwidth, but how's everything going on your end? And by the way, this person spoke about you and says, hi. No way. He's with you guys right now.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. Recruiters move around.
Yeah.
And if you have good relationships with recruiters at one agency, those guys are going to be moving around.
Same with hiring managers, not just recruiters. Everybody is always moving around. And so if you have a good relationship here, you'll have a good relationship there if you keep the relationship alive. I told you about that recruiter that I really, really like and enjoy working with. He reached out back in 2021, I think. And we kept just chatting every 3-4 months for like 2 years before I even got staffed on one of his projects. And that's because we kept the relationship alive, but also because, some recruiters are just better than others at
the human aspect.
Yeah, the human aspect of the job. But this is also your responsibility. Even if they don't reach out, it is your responsibility to keep networking and keep this relationship alive, as I said.
And something very important is, don't just keep networking with recruiters. Keep networking with maybe your old clients.
Yeah.
People that you've worked there, like when it's their birthday on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the perfect opportunity to say, hey, happy birthday, wishing you all the best. Hope everything is going well on your end. Anything new?
Yeah.
That's it. Like, if they respond, that's fine. Cool.
If not,
you have a conversation.
It's okay.
Then move on. But very important, like, keep those relationships going. Like, I've worked with people 2 years ago, and I still have connections with them. I still talk to them. They're now in industry. They sometimes reach out. Oh, we have a need for this. Do you have someone in your team that could help us? And those ways of connecting are more profitable because it's direct to client, right? But those take years and years in the making.
Yeah.
So 5 years from now, hoping Workday continues to be a superstar, right? The network that we would have built over those years is going to become quite significant. And I'm hoping by then that most of the engagements that we get and our teams are staffed on will be direct to clients. I will always continue doing business with recruiting agencies because they have a way bigger network than we do. But it's also up to us to build our own networks and do it in a professional manner.
Yeah, and I also think, it depends on where you want to go in your career. Some independents, they just want the freedom and they want the quality of life, so they don't really care about like getting their own clients, etc. Some others, they want to build consulting companies, so it's different for them. So it really depends on your goals that you can think about, when you get started, once you have, that velocity in your operations.
And the way I think about it is not necessarily like, oh, I want to make more money or whatnot. No.
Yeah. How can
That's
you add more
literally-
value
yeah,
to your
exactly.
clients?
It's really just how to become more personable, how to bring more value to my clients. I don't staff anyone below 6 years of experience. That's the minimum that I'm looking for. All the people that I work with are all architect level resources.
Yeah.
In our team, we don't look for anyone that doesn't have the experience to bring the value to the client, because there is no point. There's going to be frustration being created, and the professionalism and the knowledge that comes along with it is different. I'm not looking to become a partner that starts with recruiting new hires, training them, and so on and so forth, because that is a personal choice I made, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to have the hassle behind it. I just want to have my clients, my engagements, my staffing, everything that is doable with minimal effort, or not effort, but minimal issues, because the professionals that I work with already know their stuff. They don't need me to handhold them in doing everything. And that is my level of comfort. Different people, different levels of comfort.
And I think you just mentioned something important. So you have these people, these architect level people that you're working with, and they have the necessary experience to bring value to clients. How do they keep upskilling? How do they keep being relevant in today's market, especially as an independent? And this is related to our last point, our last don't stop learning as an independent. And that's the main thing I think that people mention. They're like, hey, if I go independent, like, no longer have access to certifications. Some people think they lose access to community, and they're not gonna keep learning. What do you have to say about that?
So this is why I said I'm never going to stop having relationships with recruiting agencies right now, because they're the ones that have the right to keep certifications, right?
You mean the partners, yeah?
Yeah. So some partners, like, I'm just going to put some names out there. GQR.
They're public, so.
Yeah, like, I'm just saying, like, for independents, right?
GQR, BGSF, Planet.
Stormloop, Planet Technology, Remy. Like, those are all agencies that are allowed to hold your certification. So basically you went through working with a big partner, I don't know, PwC, Deloitte, Accenture, you name it, and you now transitioned into independence, and you want to keep those certifications active because they bring more value to the client, right? You could either go independent and work directly for a partner through an agency, or you could just say on interviews, guys, I still have my certs active. And just saying that is going to actually bring value to the client. They're going to know, oh, okay, this guy is actually up to speed on what's happening, what's the new releases. He's not obsolete.
Yeah.
And this is very important, is that Workday changes every 6 months. Some fields are being retired, some functionalities are being retired, and new ones are showing up. So it's very important to keep up to date in reading, because we have documentation now in Workday community. If we go back when Workday Finance, for example, supply chain management started, when I started over 6 years ago, there wasn't as much documentation as we have today.
Yeah.
So it was really like you figure it out by testing into the system and going crazy with it. But now you have access to so much more information. So it's up to you as a professional to want to continue being amongst the best, reading through Workday community, testing on your own. This is not a client that's going to be paying for this. This is on you. Like,
on your free time.
You're investing in yourself, and you get the chance of getting additional certifications.
That's what I wanted to talk about. It's not about being just updated and getting the releases and everything. It's about also getting other certifications.
100%.
I think you've seen people, I've had this experience myself where I actually asked a partner, like, hey, can I get this new certification? And some partners, they make you pay for it, and then you're free to go. Some others, they are happy to pay for it if you're getting staffed on one of their projects, etc. So you can still keep learning this way.
100%. And because of how many there are right now out there, it's your pick.
Yeah.
It's up to you. Do you want to have your certs being held by someone and they pay for new certifications, and then you just say, you figure out my staffing, you figure out everything, you've paid for everything that I wanted, and now I'm just like a sub-employee, I would visualize it as. So basically you need to complete a certain number of hours of billables through that agency in order for that certification to become yours, in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise,
so that they get an ROI.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, you have to pay for it. If you leave, and transition your certs to someone else without having completed those number of hours, right? Other agencies, they tell you, your choice. You want to pay for it, you pay for it. You want us to pay for it, we pay for it, but then you have the number of hours that you need to complete for us to justify paying for it, right? My opinion, at my point in time, I would pay for my own cert. It's not that expensive. Yes,
it's becoming expensive now with the update.
It does cost a bit.
Yeah.
But it's an investment in yourself, and I have more flexibility in what I want to do with my certification, right? So that is something that I personally think. Everyone is free to do what they want. They could get certified, complete, 12,000 hours. Sorry, not 12,000, 1,200
it's not
hours.
A pilot license.
Yeah, I know. 1,200 hours or 1,800 hours, whichever is the norm, before having the cert rights to move it somewhere else without having to pay any penalties, right? But I prefer having the flexibility, and that's my recommendation to the people that I work with as well.
Oh, that's great. But aside from certifications, what else can you... There's also everything related to being a good consultant, so all of the soft skills, all of the presentation skills. I think it's all about like who you are as a person. But at the end of the day, if you don't keep learning, you'll just die off at some point. So are you doing anything else outside of certifications and getting new certs to upskill?
To be honest with you, it's all about like what is of interest to you, right? So I've always wanted to do an MBA and just overall management, right? So the older I become and the more specialized we're becoming in Workday and this environment, the more I'm thinking this is not the time to do the move in doing those additional certifications and everything, because you're busy with work, you're busy with XYZ. I believe during downtimes is when you pick up those additional curriculum and increase your overall network and net worth. So that is my opinion. At the same time, I would do certifications on the side. A PMP is always valuable in what we're doing. You could do some certificates online for management. You could do some certificates around accounting for finance, because those are the areas that I work with the most. So I do read the books, I do read documentation, but as always, reading and doing theoretical training is nothing
compared to real projects.
Actually doing the work.
Yeah, I think you just need some retrospective actions on your projects, on your clients, and then you just look at the missing points or where you can just learn more and just go get that training or that knowledge. But overall, I think those are the 7 don'ts. We're kind of like your dad. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that.
And then it's up to you.
Yeah, and then it's up to you. Like, we're not responsible about like what you're going to do. But let us know in the comments if you have another don't. If you've been an independent and you want to advise other independents, let us know. If you're on Spotify, you cannot leave a comment, but on YouTube you can. So go subscribe there as well. Mohamed Krid. Krid or Mohamed?
Either way works, man.
Mohamed Krid.
Everyone has a hard time with winning. So.
Appreciate you coming here and being part of this first episode. Very excited about the upcoming ones. Upcoming one is with another friend of mine, so subscribe. It's going to come out next week. And so thank you again, Mohamed. I'll invite you for another episode for the tax thing for independence.
It's a pleasure. And always more than happy to show up and answer any questions, help anyone that could take the advice. Because I wish we had that advice when we got started. Like, we started and no one was there for us. So
exactly.
It was a fun learning curve, right? But happy we didn't do any of those mistakes.
Any of those 7 mistakes. Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.